والتزام وتعاون كل من القيادات السياسية والدينية بقضية السلم. نتابع على بركة الله جلسات هذا الملتقى التاسع لمنتدى السلم. أشرف برئاسة هذه الجلسة، ويشرف المنتدى هذه السنة بنسبته إلى عاصمة أبو ظبي عاصمة الدولة. هذه الدولة التي ما فتحت على خطى الشيخ زايد طيب الله ثراه، تستضيف ماديا ومعنويا مبادرات الخير والنماء والتعايش والسلم، حفظها الله قيادة ومجتمعا وأدام عليها نعمة وأفضل. انتساب المنتدى إلى أبو ظبي نقلة نوعية تقتضي السعي إلى المزيد من التواصل والتعاون بين التنظير وبين التفعيل وتشبيك الإرادات والمؤسسات والهيئات العاملة في نفس المجال محليا وإقليميا. وإذا كان المنتدى من حيث التنظير والتأصيل رائدا في العالم الإسلامي في حمل لواء دعوة إلى السلم بجهود أستاذنا وشيخنا معالي العلامة الشيخ عبد الله وبمعية شركائه في التأصيل وفي البحث عن شركاء من الأديان المختلفة، حتى أن وعيا جديدا بإعادة اكتشاف النصوص في كل دين وما تحمله من إمكانات التسامح والتعايش والسلم، فإن الحاجة ماسة في هذه المرحلة بعد هذه النقلة النوعية إلى المزيد من الجوانب الإجرائية والمبادرات العملية، وهذا ما نتوقعه ونطمح إليه في كل جلسة من جلسات هذا الملتقى وورشة من ورشاته. في هذه الجلسة التي تستضيف شخصيات تجمع بين الحكمة النظرية والعمل الميداني، تحاول أن تجيب هذه الجلسة على مجموعة من الأسئلة، جلسة الأمن الروحي والتحديات النفسية وعولمة الحرب، من قبيل ما تصدر هذه الأمة التي يعيشها الإنسان في هذه العقود المتأخرة. ما دور الأمن الروحي في خلق الطمأنينة وإنزال السكينة في قلوب الناس؟ كيف تسهم الصحة النفسية والأمن الروحي في استقرار المجتمعات؟ كيف يمكن من الحد من الدوافع النفسية للتدمير والعدوان؟ كيف يمكن تعزيز الأمن والصحة النفسية والآليات التي يتوسل بها لحفظ السلم المحلي والدولي؟ كيف يمكن توفير العلاج النفسي أيضا للأطفال واللاجئين في الحروب؟ كيف يمكن تقوية التدخل بتوفير خبراء لكي تلتئم الجروح النفسية لضحايا الحروب من أطفال وعجزة ونساء؟ إن شاء الله يجيب عن هذه الأسئلة المتحدث التالي أسماءه: الشيخ الدكتور حمزة يوسف، يافت مطعم الجلوس، حكم نادي الوزن، بروفيسور فاني فولكان، فضيلة الشيخ أحمد بن محمد، وسنبدأ بالمتحدث الشيخ الدكتور حمزة يوسف عنصر، مؤسس ورئيس كلية الزيتونة بالولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، أحد أكبر علماء والدعاة المسلمين في أمريكا، مترجم العديد من المؤلفات من العربية إلى الإنجليزية، ومشارك في كثير من المؤتمرات والحوارات ومنها حوار التسليم. فليتفضل مشكورا 15 دقيقة إن شاء الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا، والصلاة والسلام على جميع الأنبياء والرسل، على سيدنا موسى عليه السلام وسيدنا عيسى وعلى أبينا إبراهيم عليه السلام. We're reminded in the book of Genesis that those who bless Abraham will be blessed by God. So we're here, many of us are from the Abrahamic family, but in the tent of Abraham, all are welcome. Alhamdulillah, I have a speech. I was told I was 20 minutes, but I did not know there would be two previous excellent speakers. And as the wise man once said, talks should never exceed the capacity of the bladder to hold water. So in light of that, I'm going to just give you some what the Arabs call ru'us al-aqlam from my talk, and for anybody that is interested in reading it, because there is a lot of statistics and things in there, they can go to zaytuna.org, ZAY2MA.edu, sorry, and I'll put it up there. So, I mean, essentially what I argue in this paper is that we're living in unprecedented times, and I'm sure in every time people have said that they're living in unprecedented times, and it's obviously true. As Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's always the case. It's always the best of times, it's always the worst of times. And one of the things that religion does is it gives people the ability to deal with the times that they're living in. And there are many extraordinary studies about the ability or the capacity of religion to help people navigate their difficult times. But before we get into that, I want to give a definition of mental health. Because we talk a lot about mental health, but really when you look, there aren't really very good definitions of mental health. The World Health Organization defines it as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not really the absence of disease or infirmity, which is fine, but it doesn't really tell us what they mean by well-being. Like, what does that really mean, well-being? So I want to give a definition of health from a brilliant philosopher of medicine from Greece, and Greece is one of the ancient places of medicine. George Pathocus said that health is freedom from pain in the physical body, a state of well-being, freedom from passion on the emotional plane, resulting in a dynamic state of serenity and calm, and freedom from selfishness in the mental sphere, having as a result a total unification with the truth. A truly healthy human being would combine both divine qualities of love and wisdom. And one of the interesting aspects of our faith is there's good and bad religion. Religion is like medicine. If you don't have good pharmacists that actually put the medicine together, and then physicians that actually prescribe it becomes a poison. And we have a lot of bad religion out there that in many cases is making people mentally ill. But there's an immense amount of good religion, and this is what we here in this forum are focusing on, and the importance of it in helping people navigate these things. So, in looking, there's amazing studies that have been done. One of the most interesting is by Dr. Harold Koenig of Duke University, who looked at hundreds of studies. And what he found was that religion is actually very helpful in dealing with devastating health issues, natural disorders, war, terrorism, and other stressors. And he showed that people that prayed and read scripture had significantly lower mortality rates than those who did not engage in religious activities. Forbes, quoting his study, actually said in 2019, although religion and spirituality correlate to an external locus of control, such as God as the higher power in control of our destiny, most research concludes that those who are religious have a strong internal sense of control. Dr. Harold Koenig of Duke University contends that as people pray and ask God for guidance, they feel a sense of control over their own situation, helping them cope with depression and anxiety. There's an amazing study by the World Bank called Mental Health and Conflicts, Conceptual Framework and Approaches. I won't quote, I have a considerable quote from there. I won't do that, but it talks about the fact that in Afghanistan, one of the things that really helped the Afghanis in their trauma was the ability to pray and to read the Quran and to call on God. And the same is true in Palestine and in many other places. One of the most interesting things about religion is it gives people purpose. And the Australian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who was in concentration camps during the World War II, and he said what it taught him was that meaning and purpose are essential in coping with great tragedies, calamities, and trials of life. So in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which Dr. Ashat quoted to me, he didn't know I was going to quote him today, but this morning at breakfast, he quoted Viktor Frankl to me, so I was really stunned by that. But Viktor Frankl said that the most important thing for where a human being is to be present and to recognize that each moment is what we have, and to infuse that moment with meaning. And that this enables us to remain resilient in the face of even the worst horrors. One of our great Muslim sages, Sa'd ibn Abdullah, was asked, when does a man finally find serenity? متى يستريح الإنسان? And he said, when he realizes that all he has is the moment that he is in. That's all he has. Right? And this is what we call the numstans, the an and da'im. You know, this is God. God is the eternal now. God is present. And tapping into that is one of the most important things for human beings to survive this place, which is a difficult place. Frankel said the salvation of man is through love and in love. And he writes poignantly, for the first time in his life, he was able to understand the meaning of the words, the angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of an infinite glory. He ends his book by reminding us that man is the being who invented the gas chambers at Auschwitz, but he's also the being who entered those gas chambers upright with the Lord's Prayer or the Shema Yisrael on his lips. And I would add to that those who uttered the kalima of Tawheed, because there were some Muslim Soviet prisoners that also died at Auschwitz, like Hassan Ramadan and Muhammad Sultanov. A lot of Muslims are unaware of. Anyway, we're facing immense challenges. We have extraordinary evidence of the effects of war and the tragic nature of war. I was very moved the other day by our sister from the United States at the Institute of Peace, who has seen all these conflicts. And what she said, there's nothing more important than working for peace. Also food scarcity. Ukraine, who would have known that Ukraine supplies so much of the world's grain? I know 80% of the wheat of Tunisia comes from Ukraine. They're suffering in Tunisia right now because of the grain prices. Our religions all encourage us feeding the hungry. It was the first khutbah of the Prophet when he went into Medina was to feed people. أطعموا الطعام. Right? He said, أفشوا السلام وأطعموا الطعام وصلوا الأرحام وصلوا بالناس والناس الياس. So that security and food is very important. Our Prophet ﷺ really also reiterated the words of Jesus in Matthew 25:43. Our Prophet ﷺ told us that God will say on the day of judgment, "O children of Adam, I was hungry and you didn't feed me." And they'll say, "My Lord, how could I feed you when you're the Lord of the world?" And he will respond, "Did you not know that one of my servants was hungry and you did not feed him? Had you fed him, you would have found the reward with me." Our Jewish and Muslim traditions both encourage and actually obligate us to give grain tax, the gleanings, and the zakat and fitr for the Muslims, giving grain tax and food tax. One of the most troubling things about our time is the distractibility of the time. The fact that our young people are growing up on these machines, that they're constantly distracted, that they've lost a sense of time and place, which are orientation to time and place is the foundation of mental health. This is the first thing that physicians ask people in hospitals. What time is it? Where are you? Knowing where you are, being oriented to time and place. And so these new technologies that are really creating this epidemic of attention deficit disorder, where people can't even sit without looking at their cell phones. I mean, we see it in this room, we see it everywhere. People are unable just to simply sit and just pay attention. People used to sit for hours. The Lincoln Douglas debates went on for 5 hours, and people could listen. Distraction. In fact, the word in English, distracted, was the old English word for insane. That's what they called insane people, distracted people. It's amazing. So what can our religious traditions teach us about suffering and the tragedies in it? Well, one of the things is that life is suffering. This was Buddha's first truth. The Prophet ﷺ said that al-mu'min mubtala, the believer is in tribulation. The Quran says that God created life and death to try you, to test you. You will be in tribulations. The Quran says God will try you in the tribulations of hardship and ease. The Quran says
Prepare yourselves for tribulations that don't just afflict the guilty among you. اتقوا فتنة لا تصيبن الذين ظلموا منكم خاصة. It affects everybody, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In Ukraine, there are many innocent people, and there's guilty people, there's bad people. But the innocent people are affected. All over the Muslim world, we see these trials and tribulations. So knowing that helps people navigate these things. Nietzsche said if a man has a why, he can endure almost anyhow. If a man has a why, he can endure almost anyhow. This was Viktor Frankl's message. Our Prophet ﷺ, now we have global warming. Gutierrez mentioned recently about that we're in the fight of our lives and we're losing. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, said, according to Imam Malik, in a hadith that it's mawquf, but it has hukm al-rafa' according to our ulama in the Utbiyah, Imam Malik reported to say that the Prophet ﷺ said that towards the latter days, يَشْتَدُّ حَرَّ الْأَرْضِ وَيَشْتَدُّ الْبَلَاءُ عَلَى النَّاسِ, that the earth will heat up and it will cause great calamities on people. We know that Jesus predicted in the New Testament there will be signs of the sun, moon, and stars on the earth. Nations will be in anguish and in perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint in terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken and moved. Daniel tells us in that extraordinary book in the Old Testament, Daniel tells us, time of trouble such as never was. During those latter days, he said, men will travel to and fro, and knowledge will be greatly increased. No man knows the hour according to all of our traditions. And we can't live our lives in an apocalyptic state of mind, even though our traditions do remind us of these latter days. Our Prophet and all of our religions teach hope. Our Prophet said if the end of time comes upon you and you have a seedling in your hand, then you should plant that seedling. So, one of the most important things is distinguishing between what we have the ability to do as religious people in helping people navigate these things, and recognizing that there are certain things that we need real health professionals. This is particularly important in psychoses. Like we need to know our limitations, but religions have a great solace for people. I want to close with something about stopping gaps. And this is from a Taoist tradition, but we also have this idea of stopping gaps in the Islamic tradition. A gap is an opening. This is from the master of Demon Valley. It's a few thousand years old. The Chinese were very wise people. A gap is an opening, a space between barriers that makes for tremendous vulnerability. At the first sign of the gap, it should be shored up and repelled or stopped or hidden or overwhelmed. These are called the principles of stopping gaps. When things are perilous, sages know it and preserve themselves in solitude. They explain things according to developments and thoroughly master strategy whereby they discern the subtle. Starting from the slightest beginning, they work against tremendous odds. When they provide the outside world strategies for nipping problems in the bud, all depend on stopping gaps. Stopping gaps is an application of the arts of the way. When land is in confusion, there is no enlightened leadership above. Public officials have no real virtue. Then petty people slander and despoil. Wise people are not employed and sages go into hiding. Greedy connivers go into action. Rulers and ministers confuse each other, fall out with each other, and attack each other. Parents and children separate, and there is rebellion and antagonism. These are called budding gaps. And when sages see budding gaps, they plug them with laws. If society cannot thereby be ordered, they stop up the gaps. If it is unruly and overwhelm them, sometimes they attack the problem one way, sometimes another. Our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, when a sage dies, a gap opens that can only be stopped by another sage. The Mauritanians traditionally call their scholars Murabiqun. Sheikh Abdullah ibn Bayt is a sheikh here, but in Mauritania he's Murabit. The Murabit is the one that stops gaps. He's the one who watches the borders of the mind where gaps open up and stops them. This is what we should be doing, stopping the gaps. And in conclusion, when W.H. Auden, the great English poet, heard of the invasion of Hitler in Poland, and this was the beginning of World War II, He wrote a poem, and at the end of that poem he said, "Defense us under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I compose like them of eros and dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame." That's what we're here doing. We're showing an affirming flame. May God make that flame shine brightly, inshallah, and may we be able to fulfill to the best of our ability so that we can say on the day of judgment, we tried.
معنى الوجود في الصحة النفسية وتجاوز الآثار والأزمات والتحديات، وموقفي الأدياني من هذا الموضوع وخاصة في علاقتها بأهمية الغذاء. أعرف أن الالتزام بالوقت في مثل هذه الموضوعات تمرين عسير، ولذلك أشكر اللجنة المنظمة لأنها أتاحت لنا فرصة بإضافة بعض الوقت للمزيد من الفائدة. الآن كلمة لنيافة مطار أندلس رئيس أساقفة الكنيسة الشرقية الأرثوذكسية بالأردن والمندوب البابوي للمملكة المتحدة، تفضل مشكور.
Thank you, moderator. If you allow me, I will speak from here. I'm more comfortable speaking while I'm standing. It is a wonderful privilege to be here with you. I'm very thankful to the organization and to this forum that has opened up a platform for like-minded people and people of faith and religion to speak to matters of global importance as well as local significance. The first thing on this matter to say is that while conflict may be global, it starts with the individual. Its impact is mostly on the individual, and quite often, its solution lies with the individual. And so as we continue to care for individuals, we care for them as they were created, as spiritual and complex beings. You see, conflict is not the natural state of humankind, but it is peace and harmony. In our shared tradition, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26, we read God say, "Let us make man in our image and according to our likeness." An image of spiritual depth, a likeness of life, harmony, and love. And in the book of Job, we read, "Your hands have fashioned me, an intricate unity." Although we are complex beings in many ways, we are united in this being of body, mind, and spirit. We are united in a life that is entrusted to us, and one that we must live to the best of our ability in that image and likeness of God. And of course, in the Gospel of St. John chapter 17, many of our Christian sisters and brothers here will be familiar with 17:11, where our Lord Jesus Christ prays and says, "That they shall be one." Now, in our Christian context, we are speaking about the ones of the church. But in this context, we also recognize that it could be a calling to a oneness of heart and spirit and mind, a oneness of mission, a oneness of intention and integrity, and a oneness of care for our world and our fellow human beings, whoever and wherever they may be. Then we come to the point of faith. What is faith for this person created in the image and likeness of God? In the Epistle to the Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1, we read that now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That is why faith is rarely able to be logically explained or rationally justified. It is a matter of the heart and a matter of the spirit. is a matter of the whole being. It is deeper and greater than logic and rationale, because it speaks to the very being, the core of who we are in God's image and likeness. Many may be aware of the Truro Review that was commissioned in England that looked into persecution of Christians around the world, but looked into persecution of all people of all faiths and none. It was a matter of faith and belief, and the outcome confirmed that 80% of the world's population will see itself as having some sort of faith or belief. 80%. We are told that religion, faith, are irrelevant and weak. We are told that we are powerless. But our message is strong and effective and impacts millions around the world. And this is the strength of a forum like this. Through this nature of being able to thrive and live spiritually according to our own sense of faith and religion, we are able to be those spiritual beings and to live that well-being and that matter of the heart and of the soul. We are able to be ourselves as God has intended us, not as the world dictates. From human creation to faith. Now faith as a solution. Far too often faith is portrayed as a source of trouble and instigator of strife and division. It is presented as a source of terror and bigotry. Faith, however, is a solution, as it speaks to the heart of the vast majority of the world, as we've just said. It speaks to the higher morals. This is only true if our teaching is consistent with our ethos and ethics. It is only true if our actions coincide with our words and our teachings. And in that address, we must address the other as an equal, and equally with rights and entitlements, and ourselves as equal with responsibilities and duties. So too being able to allow the person to thrive in that faith that he or she has been born into or has chosen. And so we must take responsibility for our messages and the impact those messages have on others. Our message is ours, and so therefore it is our responsibility. And our people look to us, and therefore that is our responsibility. We must take responsibility of the impact of our teachings on our own people and on others impacted by them. We must continue to show our religions and our teachings and our scriptures to be a source of wellness, to be a source of peace, to be a source of collaboration, to make sure that it causes no harm to its recipients or those affected by them. We challenge people to that higher calling and that higher understanding. His Excellency the Foreign Minister of the Maldives said earlier that we make choices. And we do make choices. We make choices in which scriptures we use, how we use them, how we portray them, how we direct them, and how we expose them. These are our scriptures. Many have weaponized scripture. It is our responsibility to present scripture as a living word and not as a source of control or terror. If we do not ensure the safety and safeguarding of our teachings and our practices, instead of being means of wellness, of health and safety, of body, mind, and most of all of spirit, they become a source of disease, ill health, and conflict. Especially at a time in which we live, a time of geopolitical instability, regional conflict, people displaced displacement, internal and external, that has far exceeded any other time in history. Food poverty, water scarcity, and climate crisis. These are all things that affect our people, individuals, personally and directly. And so we must be those who support and strengthen and comfort. To ensure that spiritual wellness, we must ensure that the person is able to live as a spiritual being and thrive and grow. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights quotes, "Everyone has a right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others, public and private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance." This is international law and treaty, and yet, as I have always said, what is actually more precise is this is a God-given law that is really enshrined in human practice. Our God-given law is that he leaves us to choose him, or, unfortunately, as some do, to reject him. He does not impose himself on us, so we must not impose him on one another. To ensure that people are able to live with that purity of heart and mind in their personal relationship with their personal God for their personal salvation. This takes us full circle of global instability and conflict being addressed through the personal treatment and dealings with individuals at the individual level where they believe, letting them live and grow and thrive in the image and likeness of God given to them, given to us all equally at the very start of creation. In conclusion, when we address these matters of spiritual and mental wellness for the individual and for individual communities who may be numeric minorities, yet they are indigenous peoples in many cases in the Middle East and around the world of their nations. When we address these concerns for these individuals and for their communities, we ensure a safer space for those individuals and for those communities, which in turn provide peace at the individual and community level. Disable any attempt to destabilize the peace that exists and radicalize the message at that level. And thirdly, to ensure the ripple effect of that peace from the micro to the macro, the global level, and affect our world. In taking responsibility for our texts, our teachings, the way we live our faith and we project it on others, we must address interpretations and misinterpretations, representations and misrepresentations of our teachings and our scriptures that may lead to harm and lead to the characterization of faith and belief as problematic and destructive. And once we do that, it is presented as a source of life and light, a way of securing and enabling each and every individual, and a way of providing much needed peace and tranquility to every person in the world, and in turn to our world. Thank you.
مسؤولية كل أتباع الأديان على تمثيلهم لدينهم والخيارات التي يتخذونها انطلاقا من قضية التدين بالدرجة الأولى، تدين واجب إلى الفرق وإن كان هذا إذا كان التدين منسجما مع حقيقة الدين فإنه يؤدي إلى وحدة القلوب وإلى جودة العيش الإيماني. طبعا نزكي نداءه إلى إيقاف كل إساءة وعدوان على الأقليات الدينية باسم الدين، وهذا يذكرنا بالجملة الأخيرة التي ختم بها إعلان مراكش، وهي جملة اقتبس من الرسالة الملكية التي افتتح بها هذا المؤتمر: لا يجوز استخدام الدين لأي انتقاص من حقوق أقليات الدين. شكرا مجددا. سأعطي الكلمة الآن للحاخام دافيد روزن مدير العلاقات الدولية بين الأديان إسرائيل، وهو حاصل على الدكتوراه في الدراسات اليهودية. أود فقط أن أذكر بأن القصد من هذه الجلسة هو إثارة حوار بين الرؤى والمنطلقات، يعني حبذا لو كان بالإضافة طبعا إلى عرض وجهة نظر خاصة أن يكون هناك نوع من التفاعل بين ما طرح من قبل. تفضلوا دكتور كريم.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As everybody has spoken from the dais, I will too. This itself actually shows perhaps different cultural language and terminology. For me, a panel actually means an exchange of views, but I understand now that actually a panel, perhaps in this part of the world, means presentations by different individuals. But I will try to resonate with some of the wonderful words we had, especially with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf's wonderful introduction. Listening to him, I was inspired to try to recall the Dickens of my youth. And I may have written this down now on the spur of the moment incorrectly. I hope you will forgive me. But his words really seem to be so relevant that I want to do a little more justice to Dickens than simply the opening phrase. Here's, if I remember correctly, what he said. Wrote, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We all thought we were going directly to heaven, we all thought we were all going the other way." I think Sheikh Hamza really highlighted beautifully for us the contradictions, the dilemmas of the age in which we live, the situations in which we find ourselves, inspired so often with such great optimism, as many of us have felt being here. And yet at the same time aware of the fact that both back where we come from and in many other parts of the world, there are serious problems, great distress, and much suffering. Sheikh Hamza sought to look at this dilemma through the lens of beautiful imagery of the apothecary, the chemist, who could put together a combination that would bring wonderful healing, but if it's not done correctly, could lead to total poisoning. It's very interesting to note that his comment about the fact that religion can be a great blessing and religion can be used as a terrible curse echoes comments of the sages of the Talmud who refer to the religion, the core of our Jewish religion, as both the elixir of life, Sam Chayim, and the elixir of death, Sam HaMavet. What determines, however, the way that it is used the implication of Sheikh Hamza's presentation is this has to do with knowledge, and that it is abused, therefore, out of ignorance. And I'm sure that that's part of the answer. But I would like to suggest that there is another factor that we have to seriously consider, and that we are addressing, and that we have to further address. I think one of the great factors in determining human misbehavior, and especially the abuse of religion, has to do with fear. And I think this relates to a very interesting, well-known song, which those of you who are familiar with Western culture will surely know. It's written by arguably the most gifted of the group The Beatles, John Lennon. And the song is well known and often played widely at different events. It's called Imagine. And the goal of the song is a beautiful goal of a true world of peace. But in the course of the lyrics, Lennon writes, sings, imagine no more countries, it isn't hard to do. Nothing to live or die for, and no religions too. This phrase articulates the fallacy that is widespread, especially within Western society. The illusion that the components of identity that make us different from one another are the problem. And that somehow if we were to eliminate all these differences, we would be able to live in peace and harmony. But in fact, that idea means reducing us as human beings to our lowest common denominator. It means divesting human beings of that which is beautiful. But not only that which is beautiful, that which is critical for their psychological, spiritual welfare. Because we are all human beings made up of identities. Identities that make us who we are these psychological building blocks of our spiritual well-being. We are members of families. When we have no families, we are out in the gutter. We are vulnerable to all kinds of both criminal as well as psychological attacks. We are members of nations. Nationhood is not bad. It is what gives us a sense of our history and of our being and of our understanding of ourselves. We are members of peoples. We are humanity. We are part of the cosmos. These are the identity blocks of our psycho-spiritual well-being. And if we ignore them at our peril. Indeed, modern ethologists, studies of human behavior, point out to the fact that in modern Western society very often you have the worst cases of physical abuse, sexual abuse, drug culture, all kinds of cults, much of which seeks to provide some kind of meaning, purpose, and identity for those who live in a deracinated, rootless world of total confusion. The absence of identity is threatening so many parts of human civilization. And this often, when identities are not available for people, then they look at straws to be able to clutch, to give some kind of stability to their existence. Because religion is bound up with identity, it is inextricably connected to our psycho-spiritual well-being. These components of identity that I referred to before may be looked at like a spiral. If you are part of a family, and you are part of a healthy, happy family, then you can relate to other happy families constructively. If you are not part of a happy family, but you feel that you are, if you like, vulnerable and maybe even marginalized, then you will not be able to contribute to the well-being of wider families. Similarly, if you are a community, an ethnic community in a society, where you feel that you are part of that society, a welcome presence in that society, then you will want to contribute to that society. But if you are an ethnic community or an immigrant community or whatever that does not feel that it is truly respected, let alone even understood by the wider society, your tendency will be to cut yourself off, to isolate within your own narrow community where you feel more secure. And because religion is bound up with these components, because religion seeks to give meaning to my understanding of who I am as an individual, who I am as part of a family, who I am as part of a people, who I am as a community, who I am as part of humanity, who I am as part of the creation as a whole. Because religion seeks to give meaning to our identities, when our identities feel threatened, so very often religion becomes part of the problem too. Because identity tells me who I am, at the same time it tells me who I am not. When who I am is part, therefore, of the wider society, I relate to it positively. When who I am feels threatened by the rest of society, I withdraw. And then in a religious sense, I become the holy, the goodly, the godly, and the other who threatens me is the enemy, the infidel, the enemy of God, the satanic. And then identity is used, yes, to give me some form of self-confidence, but very often to denigrate and to even dehumanize the other. And thus we see in almost all conflicts in the world the way religion is abused. But precisely because it is abused, it has the power to be the elixir of life, the source of healing. And that, in a way, is precisely what our gathering here means. The question, the real challenge of identity is how do we use our identities? The challenge for religions is how do we use our religions? This becomes already mentioned. How do we use them as a positive force to build bridges and healing and well-being in our world, and not to allow them to be exploited by conflict and hatred of one another? This is the challenge of how do we overcome, how do we ensure that religion helps overcome fear and alienation and trauma. We, of the Abrahamic religions, trace our history back to a man who for all of us personifies hospitality. Abraham is the symbol of hospitality. Hospitality is not just sharing food and drink and comfort with one another. Hospitality means that you show respect to one another. This seems to me to be the message of the important verse in the Holy Quran that has been quoted many times here, from Surah Al-Hujurat 49 verse 13, Lit'arafu, that we shall know one another. But we shall know one another not just because we need to have the information, and not just because we need to overcome bigotry and prejudice. We need to know one another so that we can affirm the dignity about one another, that we genuinely respect one another. And when we come together in true respect, then we can help overcome fear, suspicion, even trauma. We can promote love and respect and harmony. And that is the significance of this wonderful initiative and this wonderful forum. This is the significance of people coming together. People often say, it's just dialogue. It's not just dialogue. Dialogue is discovering the other in his or her otherness and showing our respect and love for that difference. That is what brings healing. That is what brings psychological stability. That is what enables us to ensure that religions should be the blessing that they are called upon and that they are destined to be. Thank you.
كيف أوصلنا الجهل والخوف إلى إفقار هوية الإنسان، وكيف ساهم إفقار هوية الإنسان بنزع أخص خصائصه وهو التدين وعلاقة الله عز وجل وتدهور الصحة النفسية، مع التأكيد طبعا على كون الدين طاقة إما إيجابية أو سلبية بحسب فهمنا لمقاصده الإنسان الإسلامي. ومعالي الشيخ عبد الله بن هو دائما يذكر بأن الدين مثل الطاقة النووية، يمكن أن يسلم به سعادة البشرية كما يمكن أن يسلم بسوء استغلاله لتدمير. شكرا جزيلا. الكلمة الآن للبروفيسور رامي الفركان، وهو مؤسس ورئيس فخر لمبادرة الحوار الدولي بأمريكا، ومن أشهر علماء النفس والخبراء الدوليين بجهوده في تقريب وجهات النظر وتسهيل الحوار والتفاهم بين الأطراف المتنازعة في مناطق عديدة من العالم. فليتفضل مشكورا.
I thank the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace for inviting me to this wonderful, very interesting forum. I am a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst and formerly a medical director of a university hospital. Since I'm a psychoanalyst, I want to make a reference to a communication between Albert Einstein and Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. This communication took place 4 months before I was born, in 1932. Einstein wrote a letter to Sigmund Freud and asked questions. Why war? I will not give details. Sigmund Freud was very pessimistic about human nature. Because we have all love, we also have aggression. Because of aggression, he was pessimistic. So I became a psychiatrist and dealing with patients in my office and so on. And a man from Egypt, whom I never met, changed my life. In 1977, Anwar Sadat, president of Egypt, went to Jerusalem. He went to the Knesset and he gave a talk at the Knesset. And he said that 70% of the problems between Arabs and Israelis was psychological. I think that the United States government liked Sadat, and because he mentioned the psychological wall, they came to American Psychiatric Association, and they said to this association, you go to Egypt, you go to Israel, and study. Is there a wall like that? And I was a junior member of the committee, and we began bringing together extremely high-level Egyptians, very high-level Israelis to talk. And since we were not diplomats, you can imagine it took us some time to adjust, how to listen to them and how to help them to talk to each other. For 6 years, this is before Oslo, for 6 years, we brought twice a year these people. And after the first 3 years, I became the head of the American team. And after 3 years, we also brought Palestinians to this meeting. First time Palestinians came, a Palestinian psychiatrist was sitting next to very famous Israeli general. was touching something in his pocket. And I realized, according to him, he told us that he was touching a little stone in his pocket. And the stone had Palestinian colors. And he said to General Nazif, as long as I have this, meaning his large group identity, his Palestinians, I can tolerate Zionism or Marxism. And I learned that in those days, in Gaza, many people, many Palestinians had little stones with Palestinian colors, and when they got anxious, seeing Israeli soldiers or whatever, they would touch their large group identity. So we slowly learned that behind everything, I'm not minimizing realistic issues, etc., there is psychological issue of protecting, maintaining large group identity is extremely important and sometimes also leads to destructive situations. So after this 6 years, I suddenly found myself having a new professional identity. I had no name for it. Later they called it political psychology. So I opened a center at the University of Virginia named Center for the Study of Mind and Human Interaction. At the same time, the United States government was opening the Institute of Peace. So we had very close connection with each other. First thing happened to us was an opportunity to make a contract with Soviet Union so that Soviets and Americans can talk to each other. This contract was signed, and we went to Moscow. People from Moscow came to Charlottesville, Virginia, etc., etc. And I learned that most of the people who were talking to us were Gorbachev's advisors. In fact, Gorbachev wanted to keep Soviet Union to continue. And when he felt that Soviet Union was going to collapse, they called me to go to Moscow. They collected representatives from each Soviet state to come to Moscow so that I could help them to keep Soviet Union alive. And who in fact was I? Nobody. Anyhow, after 3 days, one guy said, never mind, cookie is going to crumble, and of course, Soviet Union crumbled. After that, we had grants from many places, Pew Foundation, and also from the Washington Peace Institute, etc. And my team, which was of course multidisciplinary, without diplomats on my team, without historians, without sociologists, we could not really understand each other. So first we spent 7 years helping Russians separate from Baltic republics, mostly in Estonia. Then we spent 6 years in the Republic of Georgia, helping them to separate from South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Later on, we spent some time in former Yugoslavia, Bosnia. We brought together Serbia and Croatia, and we developed technology, which is called unofficial diplomacy. My unofficial diplomacy was called the tree model. Imagine a tree. The root of the tree is making assessment. Like if a patient comes to me, I make a diagnosis. We would spend months, sometimes years, to go to these countries and learn about their history, their problems, also unconscious issues. For example, after Estonia became independent, a ferry named Estonia sank. And this brought to people's mind that Estonia would be sinking again, and this brought in glad. So, tree model is making assessment. My multidisciplinary people will go every 4 months to these countries and bring together influential representatives of each side. And body of the tree was to help them to talk, get to know each other. And as you can imagine, when these people would come to Europe, they would expect me to tell them what to do and so on. But I kept my psychoanalytic identity, and I would say, to start whatever comes to your mind. And this way, they would start, and we learn that under stress, they would go back to their history, they would rekindle old traumatic times, they would have all kind of stuff, and anyhow, so we helped them a lot. And even in Estonia, the one who came and talked to Russians, that later became the president of Estonia, Arnold Brittle. And let me just say that, since I don't have much time, I understand, we have done this, which is written. We kept away from media because we did not want any interference. But all the things we have done, they are in the books, you can find them. And then after I retired, in 2008, I started something called, this is what I invited me here, International Dialogue Initiative. What is that? Since I meet so many people in so many countries, very important people, leaders, from Yasser Arafat to everybody I met, and also Jimmy Carter. For example, I went to Senegal. Somebody was talking about Senegal. I spent some time in Senegal with Jimmy Carter and so on. I called to London. Lord John Alderdice, parliamentarian. He is also a psychiatrist and a diplomat. And together, we selected 8 countries basically dealing with Middle East issues at that time. Representatives from 8 different countries. Let me count them. I'm finishing. USA, England, Germany, Turkey, Russia, Iran, Israel, Palestine. And we brought together these people and we became a family, in fact, within many years. In fact, the representative from Palestine will be coming to Abu Dhabi next week. Apparently there's another meeting with a lawyer from Jerusalem and going to another meeting about issues about Palestine and Israel. And we became advisors to many people who are dealing with difficult issues, like South Sudan or Poland and so on. So that if you are interested, since I don't have time to give you detail what they are doing, go to www.internationaldialogueinitiative, one word, internationaldialogueinitiative.com. www.internationaldialogueinitiative.com to see what we have been doing, and we are helping to many people to talk instead of to fight. The last sentence I want to say, when you talk, you don't kill. Thank you very much.
هذا العرض الممتع بخبراته العملية والتي تجلي أهمية الأسباب النفسية للصراعات والحروب. طبعا دون إغفال الأسباب الموضوعية، وشكرا له أيضا لتجشمه عناء السفر والمحاضرة في المؤتمر. الآن وختام مسك كلمة لفضيلة الشيخ أحمد محمد الكلو، المفتي العام لجمهورية تشاد، أحد أبرز علماء الطاقة الأفريقية. فليتفضل مشكورا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وبعد، حضرات السادة المنصة الكريمة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. المتحدثون قبلي أدعو بكل ما هو مفيد، وأنا حديثي إن شاء الله يكون قليلا جدا، عبارة عن ورقة سأقرأ عليكم منها، وأسأل الله تعالى أن يكتب لنا النجاح. طبعا جلستنا تتحدث بالأمن الروحي والتحديات النفسية. الحديث عن عولمة الحرب وعالمية السلام حديث متشدد النواحي ومترامي الأطراف، لأنه يكلف الباحث بالبحث عن أسباب الحروب أولاً، ومن ثم يأتي تصور البحث عن الحلول التي ينتج عنها السلام المنشود. السلام أيها الإخوة الذي به يكون عمارة هذا الكون. الكون كما هو معلوم لا يبنى بالحروب. الحروب حالة استثنائية قد يضطر إليها الإنسان اضطرارا من باب كما يقال الشر إن دره بالخير ضغط به ذرعا وإن دره بالشر الحسن. ولكن سيبقى السلام هو القاعدة في حياة البشر، وهو الأصل الذي يبنى به هذا الكون. والإنسان أيها السادة هو الكائن الوحيد من بين سائر الكائنات المدعو لعمارة هذا الكوكب وإزالة الخطر عنه. وقد سخرت له الطاقات التي يستطيع بها أن يحقق ما خلق من أجله، لكن الطريق إلى ذلك الهدف الأسمى قد يكون معبدا وقد يكون محفوفا بالمخاطر كالطمع والسيادة والمدحة وغير ذلك من الأمراض القلبية التي قد تحول بين الإنسان وبين ما يريد تحقيقه. فعلى الإنسان إذن، ونحن نتحدث في الأمن الروحي، عليه أن يبحث أولاً عن مسالك الحذر والحيط من هذه الأمراض كي يكتب له النجاح. ولهذا أنا هنا أسأل في هذه العجالة فأقول: ما الذي جعل هذا العمل الذي قام به مولانا عبد الله بن بية أن يكون ناجحا بهذه الصورة التي جابت الآفاق؟ يعني هذا العمل ما الذي جعله ينمو هذا النماء ويصل إلى هذه الصورة التي نراها الآن؟ السبب الرئيس أيها السادة والله أعلم بهذا النجاح هو شيء يسمى بالإخلاص. الإخلاص سر يصنع العجائب، ولهذا أقول بناء على عنوان هذه المحاضرة أول شيء ينبغي أن يبدأ به الإنسان في تحقيق صناعة السلام وبناء الجسور بين الشعوب هو بناء النفس أولا، يعلمها العمل لله. أحد مشايخنا ألف كتابا ليرد به على بعض الناس، فقال في مطلع كتابه: أنا متأكد أن هذا العمل لا أجر فيه. معناته كتاب ألفه ولا يجد فيه أجرا. لماذا؟ قال: لأنه كان لنفسي فيه حظ دافعت به عن نفسي. ولذلك الإنسان أول شيء ينبغي أن يعمله وهو يريد أن يشرع في عمل لا بد أن يقول لنفسه: هذا العمل أن يكون لوجه الله، لا لمدحة ولا لأي غرض آخر. يقول الله تعالى: وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله والمؤمنون وستردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. بدون شك هذا فيه وعد ووعيد، وفيه دعوة إلى الإخلاص فيما يقوم به الإنسان من عمل. كان أحد المشايخ يقول: كل عمل لم يكن لله فإن عاقبته إنا لله. وهذه الخصلة، خصلة الإخلاص أيها السادة، من عيون ما بعث به الأنبياء عليهم الصلاة والسلام. قال تعالى في حق نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم: لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. لفظ ويزكيهم ورد في عدة آيات من كتاب الله. والملاحظ في هذه الآيات أن لفظ التزكية في أغلبها قدم حتى على العلم كما هنا، ويزكيهم حتى بعد ذلك ويعلمهم الكتاب قدم حتى على العلم. لماذا؟ للاهتمام بهذه الخصلة لتزكية النفس، وأنت تريد أن تعمل عمل تقدمه إلى أمتك. حتى العلم بدون هذه الخصلة يصبح كالجسد بلا روح. فالعلم إن حصله الإنسان إنما يرفع عنه خصلة الجهل فقط، وأما أن يكون عمله مثمرا مقبولا وهو يحتاج إلى أمر آخر يسمى بتزكية النفس. فلا يمكن أن يكون العامل ناجحا في عمله إلا بهذا القانون، وهو ما صرح به بيان الله تعالى في قوله سبحانه: قد أفلح من زكاها. وفي الحديث: إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم ولا إلى أجسامكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم. وفي الحديث الآخر: ألا إن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. إذن فلكي نكون ناجحين فيما نقوم به من بناء الإنسان والمساهمة في إطفاء نيران العنف والحروب وتحقيق صناعة السلام بين بني البشر، لا بد من العناية أولا بتربية الروح. يا خادم الجسم كم تشقى لخدمته، أتطلب الربح مما فيه خسران؟ أقبل على الروح فاستكمل فضائلها فأنت بالروح لا بالجسم إنسان. إن العالم اليوم أيها السادة، عالمنا اليوم أصيب بالجفاف الروحي والفقر الأخلاقي. هناك أزمة أخلاق. الإنسان يقتل أخاه الإنسان ولا يبالي. لماذا؟ لأنه فاقد للأخلاق، لأنه تحول من الإنسانية إلى الوحشية، وهو يفتقر إلى صياغة جديدة، يفتقر إلى تربية روحية، وخاصة وأقولها مكررة مرات ومرات، خاصة نحن في أفريقيا التي أنهكتها الحروب ومزقتها الفتن. أفريقيا التي هي من أغنى بلدان العالم بمواردها، تملك الذهب والبترول والثروة الحيوانية، مع ذلك أصبحت بسبب الحروب والفتن في ذيل الأمم. وعلى كل أيها السادة، لو أراد العالم أو لو أردنا جميعا أن نخرج من هذه المهاترات، علينا أن نجعل مادة التربية الروحية مادة أساسية في مدارسنا وجامعاتنا ومعاهدنا، لنخرج بعد فترة من يعرف للإنسانية قدرها. ولم لا تكون هناك جامعات خاصة تعنى بالتخصص في التربية والأخلاق، كما أشار إليه مولانا مجدد العصر عبد الله بن بية في بعض خطاباته التعطيرية، إذ لا يخفى على عاقل من أن التزكية الروحية تهدف إلى تهذيب النفوس وترسيخ المعارف الإيمانية، لأنها مبنية على كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم، وكف الأذى واجتناب الآثام وأداء الحقوق والواجبات والتوبة والأوبة إلى الله عز وجل. وهي ترجمة حقيقية لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده، والمؤمن من أمنه الناس على دمائهم وأموالهم. فالتمسك بكتاب الله وحبله المتين يجعل نصب عينيه قول الحق عز وجل: واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا، وقوله تعالى: واطيعوا الله ورسوله ولا تنازعوا فتفشلوا وتذهب ريحكم واصبروا إن الله مع الصابرين. والمتمسك بسنة سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم يترجم وبلا أدنى شك توجيهات الحبيب في حياته العملية وسلوكه اليومية، والقائم بأداء الحقوق والواجبات أو القيام بأداء الحقوق والواجبات وكف الأذى عن الناس، يسعى إلى توطيد أواصر الأخوة والمودة ونشر السلام في المجتمع، ويحقق التوازن في بيئته، ويجعل منها مجتمعا منسجما مهذبا ينشر الألفة والمودة بعيدا عن كل البعد عن الحقد والحسد والكراهية والابتلاء والتطاول على حقوق الآخرين. فبهذه التربية الأخلاقية أيها السادة كنت أن أنتهي يمكن التأثير على الحياة الاجتماعية للأفراد، وبهذه التزكية الروحية ينشأ الجيل في المحافظة على الدين والزهد في هذه الدنيا الفانية، ويعالج من خلال الخلق والاختلال القيمي. يربى جيل يكون له الدور البارز في تعزيز الأمن والسلام، يحب السلام ويكره الحروب، يكون إنسانا بمعنى الكلمة، يتسم بالإيجابية ويتخلق بقيم المحبة والتسامح وقبول الآخر، ويصبح مواطنا صالحا يقوم بدوره الريادي والإيجابي في تحقيق الأمن والاستقرار وتجسيده في حياته اليومية. أسأله تعالى أن يوفق العاملين في إزالة الخطر عن البشرية وتحقيق السلام العالمي لما يحبه ويرضاه، كما أسأله سبحانه وتعالى أن يحفظ والدنا العلامة عبد الله بن بية، وأن يمتعه بالصحة لخدمة هذه الأمة المجيدة، وأن يحفظ هذا البلد الإمارات، البلد الذي انطلقت منه مسيرة السلام، أن يحفظه رئيسا وحكومة وشعبا بجاه من بيته في طيبة حرم واسمه قسم من أعظم القسم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
التوصية التي ذكرتم من ضرورة تعميم التربية الروحية، باعتبار أن السلم ينطلق ويبدأ من القلوب، وأن القلب الذي لا يحمل الإخلاص وليس المزكى لا يستطيع حمل رسالة السلم والدفاع عنها. بارك الله فيكم، وأذكر الجمهور الحاضر الكريم بعد شكره على متابعته واهتمامه، أذكره بأنه بعد استراحة الغداء هناك لب هذا المؤتمر والملتقى، وهو التوصيات التي خرجت بها الجلسات والورشات، ثم بعد ذلك البيان الختامي. شكرا جزيلا لكم، ونرفع هذه الجلسة.